Okay, Orlando Wilson here. What I want to talk about in this video is something I've bumped into quite a few times over the years. I'll give you some examples. One example very, very recently. And this is where there's so many people in the close protection business, investigation business, etc., legal-ish business, that all want to be tough guys, and they portray themselves as being tough guys, etc. But really it's just a persona. And once you scratch the surface, you find out the people that pretend to be tough guys and want to be tough guys aren't really tough guys. I was dealing with something not so long ago, an investigation case, and again, to me, investigations go hands in hand with protection. An investigation case, very nice business, was losing a lot of money on one of their overseas branches. Investigation was done. Yes, there's a lot of internal theft. Counterfeit products was being introduced to their into the stores they had, etc. It was a mess. It was an all very well organized. How can I put it? The local managers were scamming big time, and the main company was losing money. So an investigation was done. We done the investigation. We found out all the facts. We put them on the table, and now it comes down time for enforcement. And the owner of this company is a lawyer. They've been talking very tough about this to start with. They wanted all this done. They wanted all this dealt with. They wanted these people out of business. Well, the people to be working this overseas branch to be fired, new managers to come in, etc., etc., etc. Okay, fine by us. They paid very well. Very good clients to work for, but come down to a couple of days before we were going to travel with them, the manager, the owner of the business, and his lawyers, main lawyer and their assistants were going to turn up in this location and fire everybody, bring in new management, deal with the police and the enforcement phase of the investigation. You know what? A few days before we traveled, everybody lost their balls. And the country where this is not dangerous. It's not what I'd say a mafia haven. It's not really a hostile environment, but somebody put it into their mind, and I'm not sure where this come from, that oh my god, these people are mafia, these people are organized crime, these people could kill this, these people could do this, these people could do that. The people that were scamming them, the managers in their company. And you know what, there's always that possibility, but nothing showed up on our threat assessments. The police in that country would have been cooperative, etc. But for some reason, this business owner that was pretty hardcore, pretty strict with his staff, portrayed as being a tough guy, etc., etc., a man's man, lost his balls completely. And that went on to where they just abandoned that business in that location, and they sold it off, they got rid of it, where they could have made a lot of money. But they were too afraid to deal with the risk. They paid us, everything went good, etc. But this is something, I'll tell you a couple more stories in a second, where a lot of people that portray themselves as being tough guys, when it comes down to actually having to do things where there could be confrontations, etc., just lose their balls completely. This is where I've said in other videos, I don't trust people unless I've worked with people, unless I know people. Now, the close protection investigations business is not about confrontations. Many times you're going to have to deal with unpleasant situations, uncomfortable situations. But we do everything possible to avoid confrontation. Why? Only outcomes from a confrontation is somebody goes to jail, somebody goes to hospital. That's it. We don't want it. We don't want either. We want to get paid. So this is where the threat assessments come in, and actually sitting down and planning and preparing things. So if there is any potential of a confrontation, it's the risk of hostilities is kept to an absolute minimum and completely avoided. That's the close protection business. That's the investigation business. Confrontations are not good for business and not good for making money. But this is where, and I said it in other places, generally people call you in my world anyway, when they have a problem. And a lot of what I do is deal with other people's problems. And we do that as nicely as possible and as diplomatically as possible, because these days, if you want to play the tough guy, play the gangster, you'll just end up in jail. So everything has to be done legally, and this is part of the skill of the job of how can you solve problems legally and non-confrontationally. Back down to the topic of this video. Over the years, I've had business problems over the years. I'll tell you one story in a second with another guy that comes to mind. And I'll give you a story from when I was in the military. I remember when I was in the military years ago, one platoon sergeant I had wasn't a platoon sergeant, he was a sergeant in the platoon I was with. And he was this is going back to Northern Ireland. This guy, big guy, whatever, portrayed himself as being one of those big guys that like to bark a lot. And this was back in Northern Ireland when I was in 1st Battalion Worcestershire Sherwood Foresters, 4th Platoon B Company, and we was in Omagh in Northern Ireland. You know, this guy turned up, he just turned up from depot or something, we'd been there a while. He was an instructor at depot, and loud voice, etc, etc. You know what, he was the worst motherfucker I come across in Northern Ireland. He ended up having an anxiety attack before we even went on the ground. And this is a full corporal, British Army. He's just come from depot, instructing recruits, etc. Ended up having an anxiety attack in the guard room in Omagh, in Northern Ireland, before we even went anywhere. And I got stuck being in his team. And he was the only guy I come across in Northern Ireland that was ghosting patrols, etc. Absolute fucking nightmare. Like to sleep in barns, like to do this, everything which was against the grain he was doing, because he was fucking afraid of everything. And I remember he had another anxiety attack at a permanent checkpoint on the border called Claddie. I think it's dismantled now, well, it was all dismantled, but he had an anxiety attack there. You know what, this motherfucker went on to be provost sergeant which is police sergeant, battalion police sergeant in Cyprus. And you know what, he was a nonce, he was a fucking waste of time. And there's no way I would trust him anywhere. But he done his career in the military, and this is what people forget, and this is where I'm jaded towards military guys. I'm not jaded, I take a realistic look at things. I'm sure his resume was sparkling, but in reality he was a fucking bitch. And this is where, just because somebody's a big guy that likes to, with a big voice, and they might have been in the military and done really cool things on their resume, doesn't mean they're good for anything. As I said, people need to be tested, and once they're tested, you can understand if they're any good or not. Another story, we had a job years ago, surveillance job in Tulum in Mexico, very trendy, very fashionable. We needed somebody to go there and watch somebody. Too trendy, too fashionable for most of my guys, and I'm too old. So, sent along some guy, ex-US Marine, served in Iraq, etc, etc. He flew up to Miami, saw me, I gave him a retainer, off he went to Tulum to go and do this surveillance job. 2-week job, very well paid, etc. You know what, he fucked that up completely. Too afraid to go to the nightclubs, well, didn't go to the nightclubs, didn't do this, wouldn't go there, wouldn't do that, wouldn't follow the target. And we take it, and it's a European target, not Mexican. He lost his balls completely. Even though when I met him, yes, all's good, everything's cool, easy job. It would have been an easy job. I could have got some club person from Miami and sent them on an all expenses paid trip to Tulum, and they would have done a better job. But this guy lost his balls completely. Lost his balls, wouldn't leave the hotel, wouldn't go out after dark, wouldn't go to here, wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that. And somebody said to me, he most probably went to Mexico, found a drug dealer and spent all his retainer on drugs, which can happen. So this is where it's like, you have to be very, very careful when you're dealing with people. And the close protection business is a business where there's a lot of tough guys that's never done anything. There's a lot of tough guys that's never been punched in the head. Especially when you can get away with shit in London or United States, etc. You can prance around, well, in the US, you see it especially, guys can prance around with their guns, their knives and everything else, and in nice environments where nothing's going to happen. But put them in a stressful situation, And this can be a problem in US. You put somebody that can't handle the stress in a stressful situation, and the first thing they do is go for a gun, etc., you're going to have big problems. That's big lawsuits in US. It's a big mess. In UK, I'll put it this way, I remember one job, and this was a training job that I offered somebody years and years ago. And it was a good job, etc. It was a decent job. You know what, and this guy was talking this, talking that. I said, okay, I can use him, he can be managed, etc. And his reason for not flying was the flights were in business class. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean business class? You're getting paid more than, if you want to take you want to pay for business class out of the money you're going to be paid, then it's up to you. But looking at it, he was just looking for excuse not to travel. And I've had this a few times over the years, quite a few times. Other people come to mind where you offer them jobs. They ask you for work, and when you say, okay, let's go, let's do it, they lose their balls. Whether they're afraid, whether it's an ego thing, they don't want to work for somebody else, or whether it's, yes, they can talk it, but they don't have the confidence to go through with what they say they can do because they know they can't do it. But this is a big thing. Fear, lack of confidence, ego, etc. So the close protection business is a very, very strange world. This is where these days I deal with a very, very small group of people. I have people sending me their resumes, their CVs. Oh, we want to work for you. We've done this, we've done that. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, you ain't done fuck all. Unless I know you, don't waste my time. And I've had people say, well, you're being arrogant, whatever. No, I'm being realistic because I've been in this business too long. I've dealt with too many problems. And problems mean I lose money. And the business is all about money. So you have to be very, very careful who you deal with. And to me, I generally avoid the people that want to be the tough guys, etc., etc. Is that, you know what, you're not really a tough guy. Because if you understand the streets, nobody's a tough guy. It's about avoiding the problems, because then you don't want the problems, because in the real world, problems can escalate very, very quickly. And as I said, it can cost you a lot of money, can get people thrown in jail, can get people ending up in hospital or ending up in the morgue. So this business is about avoiding problems. But when you have to deal with a potentially hostile situation, things need to be planned properly so it's not that. So the risk is minimal. Anyway, just my perspective, just my views on something which I bumped into quite often in the close protection business over the last 35 years. Anyway, in the meantime, follow me along on social media. I've got more of these videos up. I have an array of books up on Amazon. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm on social media. I prefer LinkedIn, but I'm also up on X, Instagram, etc., etc. So as always, be good, stay safe, and stay out of trouble.